Good morning and welcome back from about a 6 week hiatus to Lunch in the Word. I am Donald. I am in East Texas and we are chronologically going through the Old Testament. We are in Exodus 19, 20, and 21 today. We did the New Testament and we've done the book of Genesis, the book of Job, and we are going through Exodus now. Moses is, it looks like, going to be on Mount Sinai today. So let's get into Exodus chapter 19 and see what we got going at Mount Sinai. Exodus chapter 19. On the first day of the third month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called on him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites." So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come back to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go get the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, 'Be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. They are to be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on them. No person or animal shall be permitted to live. Only when the ram's horn sounds as a long blast may they approach the mountain.'" After Moses had gone down the mountain to the people, he consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. And then he said to the people, "Prepare yourselves for the third day. Abstain from sexual relations." On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain, and very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled, and Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord descended on it fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up, and the Lord said to him, "Go down and warn the people, so they do not force their way through to see the Lord, and many of them will perish. Even the priests who approach the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out against them." So Moses said to the Lord, "The people cannot come to Mount Sinai, because you yourself warned us. You put limits around the mountain and set it holy." The Lord replied, "Go down and bring Aaron up with you, but the priests and the people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them." So Moses went down to the people and told them. Chapter 20, the Ten Commandments. And God spoke, God spoke all these words: "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven or above, or on earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day of the week by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. He rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, and anything that belongs to your neighbor. Sorry, y'all. All right. Exodus chapter 20, verse 18. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet, they saw a mountain and smoke. They trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you and keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Idols and altars. Verse 22. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites this: You have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourself gods of silver or gods of gold. Make an altar of earth for me and sacrifice it. Sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and worship offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and goats and your cattle. Wherever I cause my name to be honored, I will come to you and bless it. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you will defile it if you use a tool on it. And do not go up to my altar on steps, or your private parts may be exposed." And chapter 21. These are the laws you are to set before them. Hebrew servants. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. But in the 7th year, he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, "I love my master and my wife and my children, and do not want to go free," then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or to the doorpost and place his ear with an awl, and he will be his servant for life. Pierce his ear. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of her food, clothing, and marital rights. If he does not provide her With these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money. Personal injuries. Anyone who strikes a person with a fatal blow is to be put to death. However, if it is not done intentionally, but God lets it happen, they are to flee to a place I will designate. But if anyone schemes and kills somebody deliberately, that person is to be taken from my altar and put to death. Anyone who attacks their father or mother is to be put to death. Anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. If people quarrel and one person hits another with a stone or with their fist, the victim does not die, but is confined to bed. The one who struck the blow will not be held liable if the other can get up and walk around outside with a staff. However, the guilty party must pay the injured person for any loss of time and see that the victim is completely healed. Anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a result. But they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined by the woman's husband, demands, and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. An owner who hits a male or female slave in the eye and destroys it must let the slave go free to compensate for the eye. And an owner who knocks out the tooth of a male or female slave must let the slave go free to compensate for the tooth. If a bull gores a man or woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring, and the owner has been warned but has not kept it pinned up, and it kills a man or woman, the bull is to be stoned, and its owner is also to be put to death. However, if payment is demanded, the owner may redeem his life by the payment of whatever is demanded. The law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is still to be stoned to death. If anyone uncovers a pit or digs one and fails to cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, the one who opened the pit must pay the owner for the loss and take the dead animal in exchange. If anyone's bull injures someone else's bull and it dies, the two parties are to sell the live one and divide the money and the dead animal equally. However, if it was known that the bull had the habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it pinned up, the owner must pay animal for animal and take the dead animal in exchange. All right, so the Hebrews finally have some laws to live by as opposed to living however they want. So let's take a look and see where Miss Tara Lee is explaining some of this. Exodus chapters 19 through 21. 7 weeks after leaving Egypt, the Israelites go to Mount Sinai, also called the Mountain of God. God said he wants to meet with them, so they need to consecrate themselves. This is what he told them to do for the firstborns, to set them apart and prepare them to encounter God. Consecration usually involves a bath and clean clothes. Moses says to abstain from sex also, not because women are evil, but because seminal fluids and blood are symbols of life and death. To be depleted of either of those things points to the depletion of life, which isn't fitting in the presence of the giver of life. Also, they can't get close to the mountain or they will die. If someone does die, no one's allowed to touch that person because it'll transfer both their death sentence in the power of God. Bottom line, God's power is not hypothetical. A storm and a trumpet blast signal God's arrival. He descends as fire, covering Sinai in smoke. Then there's an earthquake. In the midst of the storm, fire, smoke, earthquake, and ever increasing trumpet sound. God tells Moses to come closer, to climb the mountain no one's allowed to touch, because God has a few things to tell him, namely the Ten Commandments. God is talking to Moses, but the people over here, God uses his personal name with them and points to his love for them. I am Yahweh, your God. I brought you out of slavery. He enters with relationship before telling them his laws. He gives them the 10 words. That is why it's called in Hebrews. The first 5 words are vertical, how to honor God, and the last 5 words are horizontal, how to honor others. Here are some things worth noting. The second word, about idols and graven images, reveals our natural inclination to worship things. Everyone worships something. Mostly, we worship what we see regularly. The challenge for our idolatrous hearts is that Yahweh has no physical form. In order to worship him, we have to move beyond our human nature, which means setting aside the created things that we can see with our eyes. Even though God does appropriate a physical form from time to time, like in the theophanies, he's not attached to or confined to that form. And when God says he's jealous, it's not like our jealousy and envy. The word used here is only in reference to God. It means its meaning is more like protective or zealous. He's protective of and zealous for his relationship with us. It is an act of love. In the third word, we see how seriously God takes his name. There are lots of layers here, but let's focus on 3. As people who have taken his name, we're called to live in ways that show we belong to him. This prohibits any kind of insincere or frivolous use of his name because it suggests we're not taking it seriously. And 3, God creates a personal offense to anything that diminishes his personhood or character. His names represent his character and his actions. Taking God's name in vain could also correspond to doubting that he is who he says he is. Chapter 21 gives us a general outline for how to live in a civil society and treat others well. It reveals God's desire to protect and respect life, including life in the womb, because all life points to its giver. In today's God shot, when the people see God's power and are afraid, Moses said something that seems contradictory at first. Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin, in 2020. So should we be afraid or not? There's a crucial distinction to make between the 2 uses of the word fear. The fear in do not fear carries the idea of dread. This kind of fear drives us away from God. It's sin adjacent. But Moses uses a different word when he refers to fearing God. It carries the idea of reverence and awe. It's joy adjacent, and it has the effect of drawing us close to God. The fear of God is composed primarily in delight and awe, moving us toward God. It's like what we feel at the Grand Canyon. We take long trips to go stand on the edge with our eyes and mouths open wide, overwhelmed with beauty, yet knowing it could kill us. Moses said that's the kind of fear that keeps us from sinning against God. I like the kind of fear that draws me closer to God because he is where the joy is. All right. Well, that was a good comeback couple of chapters, being in the 10 Commandments. So back again tomorrow. Today is December the 9th, 2024. So be back tomorrow, Lord willing, and we'll continue in Exodus. Father, thank you for bringing us together again. Missed doing this for the last few weeks, and it showed in my life for sure. So, Father, keep me grounded and keep me committed to this, Lord. We love you and we thank you. We ask for your blessings, just the ones you promised, nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Lord, guide us today as you see fit. Be our voice, be our actions. Let us bring all the joy to you. Father, we pray in Jesus' perfect name. Amen. All right, y'all. Back tomorrow. Thanks for coming back with me. I love you. Bye bye.